All right. Hello, guys. Um, I'm selling out, so I'm doing a tier list. I'm joined
Yeah.
today as well by Alex. Say hello, Alex.
Hello. Yeah,
All right.
let's get into it.
So first one we've got. I can't see my monitor. What the heck? What the frick? Is George Washington.
Yeah.
So I'm immediately thinking he's either A or S tier. He's
I'd
obviously
say S.
yeah, he's the
I think.
founding father, but the
I think the
Revolutionary
main
War as
reason
well.
he's S. Yeah, but I
This is
think
the
as a
Revolutionary
general,
Wars.
he wasn't massively great. I
He was a
think.
good leader.
Yeah, he was a good leader.
Yeah.
I think that he could have been a dictator if he wanted to, basically. Or he could have even been
Yes.
like a
Yeah.
king.
Yeah. He
That's the
decided to
main
draft the
thing.
Constitution. Yeah.
Exactly.
That was
He
basically his
decided to give up
choice.
his power, so yeah,
Yeah, it's
that's
pretty
why he
based.
gets S. I think.
Because we went to was it Monticello, his place?
That was Jefferson's. I
That's
think
it.
this is Mount Vernon.
Mount
I
Vernon.
think.
We went there, didn't we? I think.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
we did.
we saw stuff about him. And to be fair, he does have that kind of impact on you that, yeah, he does almost feel like a kind of king. Bit like we have William the Conqueror over here.
Mm.
He does almost feel like their equivalent, almost, of like forming the nation basically in his own image. That's kind of continued down to the.
It's a
I
nice
guess
gap.
somewhat. Yeah.
I feel bad for him because he was kind of in politics until very late in his life, and all he wanted to do really was just retire to his home.
Yeah. Yeah. He also didn't he have like 5 kids with a slave or something? Or was that
I believe that
Jefferson?
was Jefferson.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Jefferson.
Washington had slaves, but I don't think he had relations with any of them.
Right. Yeah. 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 So next we got John Adams.
Yep.
I'm
Big John
thinking.
Adams.
I'm thinking. B,
I'm
maybe
thinking
C.
B.
Yeah.
In fact, I'd probably give him a C. Yeah, give him a C.
I mean, he's definitely carried on the torch. Like, he's been passed the torch. He hasn't done anything, like, bad, per se. But he also hasn't necessarily progressed the country in the same way that maybe someone like Jefferson would have done.
I agree. I think, yeah, he was disliked by the public, which is why he only had one term.
Yeah.
And he kind of lost. He lost to Jefferson. He ended up losing to Jefferson. He was a Federalist, though. I know you're not a massive fan of that in early American politics.
J'adore the states' rights, but you know.
Fair enough. I'm probably more of a Federalist, but that's all right.
Yeah.
I do think. Yeah. I guess we'll move on from it. Oh, I'll also say the Alien and Sedition Acts is what I really dislike about him because that's what limits free speech and immigration into a country which should have been all about those two things, you know.
And it's somewhat ironic as well because the Statue of Liberty like has that poem on it, doesn't it? It's like, "Bring me your broken, bring me your poor," and then they're like, "Actually, Chinese people aren't allowed to come in the country and shit." Yeah. All right, Jefferson up next. I think he's A tier. I think maybe S. But I think more A tier.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't give him S.
I think high A tier.
Probably for me, he's more of a B, but I'm happy to put him in A. I'm happy to.
I think it's more the legacy. I think that he's in A for. He's got a greater legacy than almost any president out there.
Yeah, I mean the Louisiana Purchase is massive.
I'd say apart from Polk, he is one of the biggest expansionists of the like early American times as well.
Yeah,
I mean, I wouldn't really call Polk early, but
I don't like Jefferson.
Yeah,
he was a massive slave owner. I think he had kids with his slave and then had kids with that kid. So he was incestuous.
Slave owner,
with a slave as well. Yeah.
Didn't he also like not free his kids until he died, or something? It was a bit strange.
Yeah,
because there was like one kid that could pass as white, but then the others were just like black, and he basically enslaved them. And then only when he died did he free them. And then even then they were like technically free, but then they basically just got brought back into slavery anyway. So
yeah, there's a lot of shady stuff with him. But I think as a president, you've got to give it to him. He was all right.
Okay. James Madison.
And he sort of defined. I'll just say about Jefferson. He sort of defined what would become the Democrat Party and the ideals of the Democrat Party. So states' rights. He's obviously on the other side to people like Hamilton. But yeah, that's probably all I'd say about Jefferson. I'm not a massive fan, but I'm happy to put him in A because he has a good legacy as a president, I'd say.
Yeah. No, totally agree. There's like the Jefferson person, and there's the Jefferson president, and I think you have to distinguish the two.
Jefferson as a person is just
shit
bag.
But
yeah, agreed. Okay.
All right, James Madison's C tier for me. Maybe D tier, but
I mean he's another Federalist. He's president during the War of 1812, which is
which they basically let's just say we got the Capitol and the White House.
Yeah.
Fucking hell.
He did. I think he did a lot more for the country sort of before he became president as a founding father.
Right. Yeah. He is almost like the forgotten founding father as well, though, isn't he? Like,
yeah, I believe he's
don't really remember him. Yeah.
Yeah. Probably by people like Hamilton, he's overshadowed by. I think he wrote the Federalist Papers.
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah. No. Yeah. Of course.
Which is obviously still a huge part of the Constitution. Right. So
where Caesar, or are we putting Beta? I think maybe it's fair to put him in B. Like a middling Beta.
Yeah. So okay. Next is Monroe.
Monroe. Yeah. James Monroe. I'm going to be honest. I don't know huge amounts about him.
So the Monroe Doctrine comes from James Monroe, which is sort of it's sort of the policy of isolationism.
Yeah.
And that they wouldn't. It's kind of isolation.
Intertangled with other people's kind of.
I kind of phrase that wrong because it's not exactly isolationism. It's sort of protecting the Americas from further European colonization because they don't want to have. Yeah. They don't want to be involved in European affairs. So in a way, it's isolationism, but in a way, they're also expansionist, and that they want to be the main power in the Americas.
Yeah, so it's very much America for Americans, almost like. It's like he doesn't want entanglement with like the British or French or the Dutch or whoever might be out there. They kind of want people to come to America, but they don't also want them to come to America as an invading force. They want to come over and maybe provide for America as a country rather than as a kind of force for kind of conflict.
Yeah.
So maybe we thinking C2 or.
I'd probably give him maybe a C. Yeah, I could put him in C.
He's definitely behind Adams. Next we got John Adams' son, John Quincy Adams.
Yeah.
Who just has a really good forehead. He does go bald later on in life, which I think is pretty awesome.
Oh yeah.
Does actually look a bit like Dr. Evil from
Yeah, the Adams family did not have great hair genetics.
Oh yeah.
Put that out there.
So I think he was better than it. Well, yeah, I'd say he's better than his father. He did more for the country. But I feel like it is kind of a case of Madison as well, where he did more outside of presidency.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he was. Am I right in saying he was really anti-slavery? I mean, his dad was. I believe
he was like incredibly like anti-slavery. He wasn't like an abolitionist, but he was like very much.
He was very.
He wanted the District of Columbia. Yeah, he wanted the District of Columbia to be like purely free of slavery, which did get passed later on. But he was basically like one of the main proponents in. I guess what you could say is the divide between the North and South then kind of occurred in the antebellum period that led to the war. He was like one of the main kind of fighters, like kind of him and Calhoun were like arguing a lot about the kind of issue of slavery, even before it was like a really main stage argument. So.
And I think Quincy Adams sided with the Native Americans in a lot of I think I'm right in saying that in a lot of sort of disputes between land, which didn't give him great
reputation.
He didn't have a great reputation with settlers and people like that, but
that's pretty good.
So I think he was overall he was pretty good. I'd probably give him a B or an A maybe.
Yeah, B too.
We'll give him a B. Okay, Andrew Jackson. He's another not very nice man.
Yeah, I like him.
Again, we're not really judging on that. We're judging on
his presidency was relatively successful. He is obviously very much a like Southern man. In terms of the fact that like his values are very much instilled with states' rights.
And his first vice president is John Calhoun.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
I mean, that says a lot.
So immediately what I'm thinking
the main thing that go on.
Is he develops the South's economy more so. Obviously, I think it's under him, isn't it? Andrew Jackson, that the 3/5 rule is instated.
Well, that was during the country's founding, right? Because that allowed all of them to sign the Constitution.
Was it not Jackson that really tried to drum that home, though? I believe he was like trying to really like reinforce it, so it would be difficult to undo.
I mean, he was the first Democrat president, proper Southern,
Yeah.
because before it had been Democratic Republican, which by this time had split into the Whig and Democrat. Yeah, the Free Fist had already been a thing.
Yeah.
That's also, I believe that's the reason that Jefferson won the election, just going back against John Adams.
Yeah.
Because the South had sort of inflated, it's very, what you call it? What am I thinking of?
No, there were slave oligarchs in the South, right?
It's just hypocritical, like, obviously, how they didn't want to count slaves as human beings, but they did want to count them as 3/5, to get people into power that they wanted to be in power.
Yeah. I feel like as well, with Andrew Jackson, it's kind of the first real taste of Southern kind of, not necessarily fire-eating, but like it is definitely like he's very aggressively Southern. Whereas you get other presidents or like representations in Congress. He's
quite aggressively expansionist as well. He really starts the Trail of Tears, Indian removal.
Yeah.
And I think a really bad thing about Jackson is he goes completely against the Supreme Court ruling that they shouldn't, remove Indians from specific territories. He just says, "What are you going to do about that?" and does it anyway.
Right. Yeah.
Which is kind of,
So I think that's our first D tier. Do you think, or maybe
I'd probably give maybe a C.
Yeah.
He wasn't great.
I fuck with Martin Van Buren, who is the next guy.
I like Van Buren.
I
don't know a lot about his presidency, I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, again, it's another one of them. Does a lot outside of his presidency. When he's president...
And after especially.
Yes, with Free Soil,
he runs. Yeah, Free Soil, he runs on the 1848 ticket, I think. But yeah, during his presidency, what did he do?
I know...
Oh yeah, the Panic of 1837. Which was a massive economic thing that actually goes into the next couple of presidents. So it was a huge thing.
Yeah. We're almost forgetting the nullification crisis, actually.
Who does that happen under?
Good point.
I'm going to look that up.
I believe it's 1830, is it?
Yeah, 1832 to 1833.
So that'll be under...
That was... Yeah, under the last year of
Vanny B, was it?
Go before Vanny B, right?
Oh yeah, it was under Jackson. Right.
Yeah, under Jackson. Yeah.
Jesus.
So that's, again, that kind of proves that he was there. He was a fire eater. But I find it weird how John Calhoun was his first vice president, just going back to Andrew Jackson.
Yeah.
But Van Buren was his second, because they're kind of quite different.
It is also to be noted that there's two Democrats in a row, which is somewhat interesting in this time period. That the Democrats have actually got that kind of hold over the country.
Yeah, and I don't know much about Van Buren's early life, but he really doesn't seem like a Democrat to me.
Right. Yeah.
I think possibly he was just on that ticket with Andrew Jackson to win votes in the North.
Quite possibly.
I don't know why he stayed Democrat when he ran for president, but yeah.
All right. So I'm probably just going to put him C tier because there's really nothing like overly special about him.
He's from New York as well, so he's definitely not a Southerner. I'd probably, if we're just going on presidency, I'd probably go C. But
as a person,
obviously his anti-slavery stuff is a lot higher. Okay, so Henry Harrison, I think we've got to put him in a D because he literally lasted like a month.
Oh yeah, that shit, yeah. William Henry Harrison, what an hell. John Tyler, up next.
I mean, the story goes with Henry Harrison that like he had the longest inauguration speech in history,
froze to death,
and then died from the cold.
Oh Jesus Christ!
He really didn't do a lot. He spent most of his presidency just sick, I think, and then died.
Fucking pig.
Yeah.
All right.
So, John Tyler.
Next. He's another.
He's really mid.
Yeah, I was just going to say he's another like very C tier president.
No one really knows anything about him. He was a slaveholder, and he did eventually become part of the Confederacy. So that
right. He died in '62 though, so he couldn't have really. He didn't really do much, I don't assume.
Sure, yeah. I believe he served in the House of Representatives for the Confederacy, though.
Oh, cool.
I'm not sure which state he was from, but one thing he did that was bad is he was elected under a Whig ticket,
Right,
but he sort of broke with the Whigs.
Just became unaffiliated,
Yeah, during his presidency.
Such bullshit.
Yeah, which isn't great, to be honest. And of course, he's still just going back. He's still feeling the effects of the Panic of 1837. I don't think he dealt with that particularly well.
Just kind of like Obama, kind of coming back after economic crash, basically, and then kind of just riding the wave almost.
Yeah, not doing much, to be honest. He also, I think true. He really contributed to like sectional difficulties in America. When that was really heating up. Because he appointed John Calhoun, I've got it here, as Secretary of State. So he then proposed the annexation of Texas, and this is where the annexation of Texas really becomes big, sort of in Senate and Congress and things.
That's the War of 1850.
And it doesn't happen under his,
the War of 1850 is obviously where that like really, really starts to like kick off. But
which war?
So the war with Mexico? Is it? No, 1840 is it the war with Mexico?
45, I think. Yeah, Mexican America.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, that's where it really heats up. But
this where they basically get the land. Yeah.
Because this is when Calhoun really makes a name for himself.
Mate, he's actually he is a good senator. It's funny how, to be honest, his values were fucking dog shit. But
yeah, of course, yeah.
It is interesting how history judges people like that. For obviously with the hindsight, it's they're evil. But at the time, people must have looked at him and thought, yeah, he's a fucking good senator.
Yeah, I find it quite hard to judge people like that, but I think Calhoun especially we can write off as a bad person.
Yeah, definitely.
As well as people like Thomas Jefferson, he's literally an incestuous paedophile.
Right.
So I don't think there's any redeeming that. Even you can't even say, oh, back in the time it's fine because it was not.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
James Polk, I think 80.
Polk was a good president. I think he was probably the best one of around this time period.
No, definitely. Especially just looking at who he's followed by. Up to Lincoln, he's followed by absolute spams.
No, you're right. Yeah. You're right. And I'd say how he started the war with Mexico was definitely
sneaky. Oh yeah.
It was very sneaky, a bit dodgy, and it's probably illegal.
Kind of like the Manchu Kuo invasion.
Yeah, exactly.
Put men across the border, say they got shot at, and then
God, what was it? The something bridge incident.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, another one.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's because this is where Lincoln also started to become slightly more well known in politics. Because beforehand he was just a lawyer. That's it. Yeah. Beforehand he was just a lawyer, and this is where he made his name. They called him Spotty Lincoln because he asked Polk where the exact spot was that the gunfire was exchanged between the Mexicans and the Americans.
Yeah.
He gave them the casus belli to actually declare war.
And I don't think anyone to this day really knows what was going on there.
No. Both sides are just bullshitting.
Yeah, from the US. But he served one term and really expanded the country a lot.
He did also promise that, didn't he? He's one of the few presidents that genuinely said exactly what he was going to do, did it, and then left.
Yeah, you're right. Similar to Coolidge.
Yes.
Just wanted to serve one term.
Yeah.
And he didn't run after that, I believe.
Yeah,
so he was all right.
I thought he was pretty
good.
I'd give
him an A. He's pretty good.
So Zach Taylor is not a good president, I don't think.
Okay, explain.
So the first thing is this is the problem I have with generals that become president. It's almost like they've been elected because they're a general, rather than because they actually have good political views. It's especially at this time when politics in America was becoming more polarized. They basically got a populist figure to basically try and bring everyone together so that everyone could get behind, because he was a war hero from the Mexican War.
Yeah.
And honestly, he didn't do that much. I believe he also didn't he eat ice cream.
He dies a year into office.
Yeah. I was gonna say on the 4th of July he eats an ice cream and then just dies. Just dies.
I didn't know the ice cream bit.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna look into that. That's funny.
So D tier, I think.
Yeah, we'll give him a D.
Okay.
Okay, we've got Miller. Okay, these are the real dough faces.
Dough faces here. I think they're all D. Apart from
I'd say they're all F.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's Fillmore. I mean, if we look at Pierce, I feel quite
Franklin
bad
Pierce
for him. Kind of
is probably the worst president in U.S. history. I would go so far to say.
I mean, he is incredibly bad. I'd say Buchanan is worse than Pierce, and especially I don't know if you know, but Pierce, about a month or so before he was inaugurated, he was on the way to a funeral with his wife and kid. He had 3 sons. 2 of them died in when they were young. This was his last remaining son. The train derailed and his son was decapitated in front of him.
Jesus, what?
So he basically became a massive alcoholic, and he was an alcoholic throughout his entire presidency. And I think he drank himself to death just after the Civil War.
Yeah, 1869 he died.
Yeah, sure. So it's kind of a sad story, but it doesn't take away from the fact that he really did nothing during.
Fucking gnarly though. That's like
Tarantino
it's really bad. Shit.
Yeah, it's crazy. But he did nothing during Bleeding Kansas.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, that was one of the worst things.
And I believe he supported Lecompton, right? The
Lecompton Constitution, which was of
course bullshit. The illegal document permitting slavery in
Kansas and Nebraska.
Kansas, Nebraska, the territories. Yeah.
Which was interesting as well, because he's a northerner. And then basically, so for context, if you don't know, guys, all the ones that are in F tier currently were nicknamed the Dough-faced presidents, which basically means they were northern presidents that basically acted in accordance with the South. So Buchanan, Jefferson Davis is his VP, isn't he? Buchanan. I think
it was Breckinridge who would then later become the Southern Democrat ticket in the 1860 election.
Right. Oh yeah, gotcha. But all of these were basically northern presidents that basically acted in accordance with the South. They were basically kind of not puppeteers, but pretty much controlled by the South for some reason. And it's not that clear why, but
people forget that a lot of Northerners supported the South for reasons for basically monetary reasons. So a lot of people in New York, a lot of bankers. Cotton is obviously a very lucrative export.
67% of the GDP of America relied solely on cotton.
Quite possibly, definitely on the South, I believe.
It was 90%.
Exports or something. It's something crazy. Is cotton. So a lot of Northerners profited very heavily off cotton, which is why they didn't want. They did support Democrat presidents and things like that. And that's one reason people say the dough-faced presidents were in it for the money, basically. Yeah. That's one theory. I don't really know.
I mean,
it would make sense, yeah.
So up next we got Lincoln. I think A tier.
I'd say S. I think Lincoln's.
You know what? Yeah, no S tier. I think that's fair.
The
only reason
kind of a basic picks for S, but I think it's deserved.
The 13th Amendment. It was very, very difficult to pass. To basically abolish slavery, properly. And it was one of the most difficult things to do.
He died before that passed, didn't he? But he's the one who did all the work getting it through.
I was actually mad as well, because we saw John Wilkes Booth's pistol. It is tiny.
Yeah.
It's actually the most pathetic pea shooter you've ever seen.
Yeah, it's so sad.
That's why he got shot and lived for another 2 days and then just died across the road.
Yeah.
So
we went to where he died as well.
Yeah. Oh, that was actually a really cool trip.
Yeah, it was. So for Lincoln, go on.
He is Welsh as well, which is why I'm slightly. Well, no, he's not.
Is he actually?
Yeah. His great grandfather was a farmer in Merthyr, I think. So
I did not know that.
That's pretty awesome.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. And I think Lincoln would probably have a worse reputation if he wasn't shot. To be honest. Because I think we've talked about this before.
Reconstruction.
He could have possibly been too lenient on the South during Reconstruction. He says all the stuff with malice towards none. In reference to Southerners who were part of the Confederacy. He wants to leave that in the past and move on. Which I think
made it. Yeah, he made it really easy as well for the South to get back into the Union.
Yeah, and I think that was definitely the right.
Yeah,
move.
I agree.
But I think he could have possibly been a bit too lenient if it carried on. But he certainly wouldn't have been any worse than Andrew Johnson who came after him.
Yeah, of course. He was also a massive unionist, which, that sounds like a very surface level observation.
Yeah.
He basically, at the end of the day, wanted to preserve the Union. It's him and Stephen A. Douglas, who was his, basically opposition for the 1860 election, were both massive unionists. They both wanted to keep the Union together, but they wanted to do it in different ways. And obviously Lincoln, in the end, because the war broke out, once he knew that they'd won, he basically wants to get back to wants to get back to antebellum America without the kind of stigma around slavery.
Yeah, he says, doesn't he? He doesn't really care about slavery in the South. He doesn't want it to be expanded, but he doesn't care. As long as he preserves the Union, he doesn't really care what happens to slavery. I think maybe towards the end of the war, he became more abolitionist.
Slightly more abolitionist.
And of course, he passes, or he begins to pass the 13th Amendment. And I'd also say he's probably like the most politically genius president that America's ever had.
Yeah, I mean his literary skills though unbelievable as well.
Yeah,
like most of his speeches and like letters.
I think they call him like the poet president.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, Lincoln. I like Lincoln a lot. I think it could have been a mistake. Was putting Andrew Johnson on the ticket as vice president in 1864.
Right.
And that was he was a massive Southern racist who sided with the Union, but for some reason, actually, I do know why he sided with the Union. It's because he hated the slave aristocracy in the South. Yeah. But he was still a massive racist and believed in slavery, basically. Segregation, definitely, yeah. And the problem...
Again, though, he was a good president, I'd say. Andrew Johnson.
Bro, I'd give him an F. I think he's probably the worst president America's ever had. He completely botches Reconstruction.
No. I'm thinking of Grant, sorry. I'm thinking of Grant.
Oh, okay. No worries. Yeah. Andrew Johnson's terrible. And I think to some extent you can look back on that and say it was a mistake putting him on the ticket. But I think if he wasn't on the ticket in 1864... I think Lincoln only won 40% of the popular vote or something, even with him on the ticket.
Didn't they also pay for loads of votes as well? Like they encouraged people basically to go out and spread like misinformation about their opposition and like positive reinforcement about them.
Possibly. There's quite a bit of shady stuff that happens under Lincoln. He bends the Constitution quite a bit, but I feel like that was necessary.
To be fair, he could have been impeached like twice. There's like 2 or 3 impeachable offences that Lincoln
of course,
but at the same time, he was a wartime president.
It's literally a civil war.
Yeah. And it's not like Jefferson Davis was like a shining angel either. He was definitely up to some bullshit as well.
They're both from Kentucky.
Yeah.
Kind of interesting.
I thought it was kind of funny as well because like after the South secedes in 1865, South Carolina tried to secede, from the Confederacy.
Yeah, I love that. It was the most South Carolina moment.
Yeah, just Calhoun turning in his grave. All right, up next we got.
You want to move on?
U.S. Grant. I think either high B or A.
Yeah. I'd give him probably an A.
Right.
I think there was a lot of corruption. The main thing that people put him down for is there was so much corruption in his cabinet during his time in office.
He was also one of the few general presidents, apart from maybe the Cold War kind of presidents, that was actually a good president and not just a kind of
I'd agree with that.
Head kind of like military
man. Who's
that,
just
didn't actually know much about politics.
Yeah, who's just put in because he's a war president or whatever, because he's a war hero. I think Grant is a really nice man. I think.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, like I say, a lot of people put him down for the corruption that happens under his presidency, but that was sort of nothing to do with him, and it was more just him being. He couldn't see that these people were taking advantage of him, basically. And that's a flaw in his character, but it's also not necessarily his fault.
Right. Yeah. Of course.
I also think that getting rid of, basically destroying the KKK in the South after the Civil War, after Andrew Johnson's disastrous, Reconstruction.
Was it
efforts?
Ellis Howard? No, what was his name? The first KKK grown was it?
Bedford Forrest.
Bedford Forrest, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so weird. Who's that? There's that historian, isn't there, that said the Civil War produced 2 geniuses, Bedford Forrest and Lincoln. It's like,
Shelby Foote.
That's it, Shelby Foote. Yeah. What a mad lad, honestly.
Yeah. I actually kind of like Shelby Foote. I'm not gonna lie.
He's actually a really good historian.
He's all right.
But
he says, that's
some
pretty
crazy
wacky
shit.
thing to say.
Hey, listen, he's not my goat, Eric Foner. So
Yeah, Eric Foner.
My goat.
Yeah, Grant. Yeah, so he gets rid of the KKK. I think he's kind of what Reconstruction should have been. You know, I think another. Oh God, what was I going to say? Yeah, again, like his character is really good. He writes his memoirs while he's really sick with cancer. I think he had throat cancer or something.
Shit, real.
Yeah, and his family was really poor after he left the presidency.
Right.
And their only way of making money was through these memoirs that he was writing. But it was like excruciating for him to get these memoirs banged out, basically. But he ended up doing it on a porch of his house in the last few months of his life. And the book published, and and he died shortly after of the throat cancer. But that sort of set his family up for a while. So he was a really like decent man.
Yeah. Exceptional general as well.
Yeah,
he was one of the few like Union generals that was actually very like effective and efficient.
Yeah, because he understood the advantages that the Union had. More resources, more manpower, and just capitalized on that.
I would also say that like I'd say Hooker's pretty good, Fighting Joe Hooker. I'd say I'd say those two are kind of like the.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's why I'm not a massive fan of McClellan. Because as good as he was as an organizer or whatever, he just doesn't understand the advantages that the Union has against the Confederacy and doesn't take advantage of that.
Well, I think that's it for the first part.
That's it for now, yeah.
Because this is a tier list. We're obviously just going to split it into two halves because we're selling out. I guess
we might even have to do three.
Might even, 3 parts. There's a lot of presidents.
And there's a lot more to say about the most recent ones as well.
True. If you like this, then yeah. All right. See you. Bye.
Cool.
Say goodbye, Alex.
See you.
Bye.